think we'll go around doing introductions first, and you've got me as chair again today. So I'm Deanna van der Velde. I'm vice chair of Northumberland SACRE, and I belong to the Jewish community in Newcastle.
Hi, my name is Caroline Weir and I work as advisor to SACRE.
Nick Moffat, I'm the Green County County Councillor for Hounslow.
Dear Humanist UK and North East.
I'm Ros Kant and I'm a teacher at Cragside Primary School.
Paul Rusby, Church of England.
I'm Joyce Miller on behalf of the Buddhist community.
I'm Claire Dixon from Slade First School, here as a teacher.
I'm Reverend Ted Marley, a retired minister with the United Reformed Church and also representing the Methodist and Senior South East Northumberland area.
I'm Councillor Les Bowman from Hollywood Ward.
I'm Rebecca Little, I'm the clerk of SACRE.
And I'm Dave Cookson, I'm the lead officer for SACRE.
Kate, I didn't get your second name. Sorry, not Kate, this lady here.
Ros Kant, so it's the
Oh. Ah, there, thank you. Okay, so can we have apologies, Rebecca?
Yeah, we've got apologies from Councillor Anna Thompson, Ian Duffield, Steve Hudson, and
Oh, Chris Hudson and Andrew Duffield and
Claire Cohen.
yes.
Could I raise a question as to this one? I'm very concerned that this is, I think, the third meeting in succession that the chair has been absent. Have we had any explanations as well as most unusual for the chair is any meeting, never mind 3 on 1?
I've got a conversation with the chair next week to discuss exactly.
Okay, thank you very much.
I don't quite know whether there is a loop system or something working in here, but as some of you are ex-teachers, please, I wear hearing aids and I can't always hear you. So please, if you can speak up. I don't know what this big thing is in the middle. It's a camera.
Yeah.
Oh, but there are all sorts of loops going to places, but I don't know what they do. Okay, so that's apologies. And things needing so organised. Any disclosures of any? Oh, sorry, no, minutes of the last meeting which was held on the 6th of July. Quite a few pages to go through. Anything on page 2? Some of the stuff will come up in matters arising. Anybody got anything to bring up on page 2? Or page 3?
I did have a question, but it's not about the accuracy of the minutes, it's just a question.
Right.
Can I
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Just at the bottom of page 3 says that there's training planned on the new syllabus with schools in the autumn. That the schools who haven't attended the syllabus launch day were asked to call in to. I'm interested to know how many schools are getting training and at hard. How many?
In terms of training, Kaz will cover that in her section. In terms of schools collecting their syllabus, we think that every school that needs one, and there are still copies left for those schools that necessarily need one but want to adopt it. So we think we're well ready.
For that. Page 4.
Just one question, Chair, on item 8. I wasn't at the last meeting, but has the any investigation been carried out regarding the workforce data?
Yes,
Yes.
and I'll talk to that.
Okay.
Yes. The SACRE, and Rebecca, you sent something out today for SACRE to access. Was it you?
Yes,
Uh,
the new login and passwords.
Yeah. Was it Natre or SACRE?
Is that right?
Can I just raise on page 4, we discussed inviting the teaching school hub, partake in the future meeting, that was arranged for today. But there was the death of a pupil in that school recently, so I just didn't feel like it was the most
Yeah.
appropriate to do for this time, but we will put that into to the February agenda.
There is a point under number 10, lobbying further funding for religious education. Actually, a paragraph on the councillors speak to the portfolio, which is guide, of course. Did anyone want to talk to the chair about that?
I'll be honest, I didn't, and as soon as I read these minutes, I put it on my list of jobs to do. So I will. Yeah, and I've got another question at the same time, so I will.
Thank you. Page 5. Six.
I wanted to just ask
Yes,
about
yes.
the dates of the meetings. I wasn't aware actually that the next meeting is due to be on the 1st of February until the agenda came out. And that's not a very good date for me, but also the fact that this says that we would have our meeting brought forward to May. I was just wondering whether that date is in May. We have the dates for the future meetings.
If we've had
It's dependent on the council meeting. Yeah. Okay. So that first of everyone.
I'll just raise a point on that, because the last point on the action plan that we came up with, the question of where SACRE stands in relation to the plan. I'm not, in my experience of other SACREs, the council has never determined the dates of SACRE meetings. And so I find the relationship between the council and the SACRE an unusual one, certainly different from my experience in relation to a whole host of things like when meetings are held, whether they can be hybrid meetings, who sets dates, how much independence the SACRE has, etc. So I think this is part of, and who chairs, I think this is all part of the bigger conversation about the status of this committee, this council in relation to council, something that detail and much more careful.
Yeah, we had a fair discussion about that in the subcommittee, didn't we? Before it is something that needs.
I think it is complex because some documents that would suggest that we are a council committee. The guidance from the National Association of SACREs is that we are a local authority committee. We're funded by the local authority but separate. I think the DFE has been asked for information, but it seems to be so that is something else to be. And of course, each local authority probably interprets this in its so very messy situation, I think. It affects how SACRE works.
I think that it needs to be discussed and a position needs to be taken so that we can move forward, because every single meeting we have this discussion about. Position at the moment is that this committee is treated like all the committees, so follows the same, which is why if that's the change, we need the background as to why that's the case, and B, some backing from the national body or something like that. But there are potential consequences of that. But yes, absolutely right. We need to nail it down once and for all, because it's been a topic of discussion for at least the last years.
Yeah.
I don't want to preempt conversations about the action plan. It is a point on the action.
Yep.
And it says council members. Objected, I would be here to coordinate some informal conversations with others.
Yep.
And then put together a series of questions to go to council to ask for clarification.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I do intend to have names next to every action on the action plan before we leave today, so that's one less to worry about. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I'm chair of Newcastle and I'm the Jewish representative from Durham. And up till now in Newcastle, we've managed to do Zoom type sessions. Even though, you know, it's within the city, but at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's not easy to leave your school and go across the city to get to a venue for 4 o'clock. And that has worked. How Ian has managed it, I don't know. Durham, we have to turn up. So there is no consistency there. I wouldn't know about other SACREs.
Will our discussion include discussion about the chairmanship of the group, given that we work under the, there's an assumption or it's a fact that the chair of the group is appointed by the council.
Joyce just brought that up and we brought that up before.
Thank you, sure.
Do I have to sign something? No. Okay, so we've looked at the minutes of the last meeting. Thank you very much for your comments. Disclosure of interest. Rebecca, can you explain why there's so much about that and all? Do you know? Or is it
It's a standard item.
Right.
Standard item. They have to put it every meeting.
Must have a tree out of that. And so item number 4, so that's you, Caroline, isn't it? An update of contact with schools and training.
Okay, so since September, I'll update from then. My main work has been replying to lots of questions about the syllabus and about how to access the things that were offered by RE today, like the schemes of work and that sort of thing, and also questions about the understanding Christianity training. And my main work has been preparing for that and delivering that training in that term. So I ran a primary first special session, and that's a 2-day course for them. On that day, I had 37 delegates. 21 of them were from Northumberland schools using the grade syllabus, and that included 1 academy, so 20 Midian schools and academy. It was a mix of, there was 1 special school and first. And then I also ran a separate middle school secondary course as well, and there were 9 delegates. 6 of them were from Northumberland schools using the grade syllabus. This was an academy, so 5 Midian. So those days, as far as I'm concerned, went well, and there was lots of positive kind of feedback and so on, anecdotally from folk. There were also other questions on those days about generally about the syllabus and so on, but I think that training went well, and colleagues were appreciative of it being so early in the year, so that then they could get planning for it. And there were some schools represented from other local authorities or Church of England schools that are in Northumberland but aren't controlled, and who'd already been using the resource. And so it was nice for people to network and talk with one another, and they really appreciated, the Northumberland schools appreciated it being in person so that they could chat with one another and meet one another. And so that was really good. So off the back of that, I'm going to just send them some follow-up materials to support them so that they can then roll out that training back in school, because I know that that's the most challenging thing. So they've been on a day of training and they're all excited about it, and then, but how do you roll it out to colleagues? So I'm putting together a little package for them to help them to do that, and I can also do a follow need to be.
Can I just ask you a question, Caroline? Would you know how many, particularly the primary delegates, were actually either the RE coordinator or the person who delivered the RE, and how many classroom assistants? Do you know?
I wouldn't be able to tell you absolutely, but my understanding is that 20 of the 21 were the RE lead.
Good.
On the them was somebody who's delivering HLTA. It's a higher level teacher.
That right? Okay.
And then what's coming next is I'm going to be running a network this half term on Wednesday, the 7th of December, for anybody who's watching and waiting for that date. And that'll be on Zoom online from 4 till 5. And I'll just get that. We've just been talking to Dave about that today, and we'll get that date sent out to folk so that we can gather on that. And then my next piece of work is then to think about what training comes next, and which other world views and then what to do them and so on. I'm also supporting a couple of individual schools who have asked for support. So Burn Primary School have asked a couple of the secondary schools off the back of the Understanding Christianity training have been asking for some support. So I'll be getting in touch.
Anybody got anybody want to ask Caroline?
Can I also just mention that we are developing a page on the Northumberland Education website where staff can go for support, guidance, resources. So if there's anything that you know of that you would like adding, or if you see it and see any mistakes, because it's my job to get this page up to date, please let me know and we can add it or take it away as needs be. So there's a section on the agreed syllabus. There is a section on subject support around today, some stuff from Ofsted, SACRE. There is examples of training, free training, both of those. Bits around SACRE and some stuff around inspection for the time being. So Kaz has got some other things she's going to send me, but if there's anything you know, and especially from colleagues from in schools, if there's things you know of that might be useful for other schools, then let me know. I can. And just a reminder that we do have the newsletter. Used to be in paper form, it's now online. And again, this is being updated as often as information comes to me. So we've got all sorts of bits and pieces on here at the moment. I think some free flashcards for Key Stage 4. Upgrade. HMD, again, anything that's free, because I know challenged financially schools are at the moment. So if you do get the chance to mention either of those things to people, then please do. The more that read it, hopefully the more.
Just remind me, is the newsletter sort of a permanent changes rather than one that has a
Permanent one that changes. So as soon as you know where it is,
yeah,
you don't need to worry. It's always going to be up to. At the moment, things aren't dropping off the bottom. I'm just leaving everything on because what I want people to do is look at it and go, "Oh, I wish I had it 6 months ago." Those things were on, but in time we'll start to take bits and pieces off as they go out.
Okay, Holocaust Memorial Day, just gone. Oh, schoolwork, sorry, Jane, missed one out.
That's all right.
Schoolwork, because I've been scribbling that one. School workforce data.
Okay, pages 7. Page 7 in your pack is the school workforce data. This data is taken from the November 2021 census, the workforce census. The information is then taken out by SACRE and sent to all SACREs. So it is quite a way out of date. You know, we're looking at nearly 12 months out of date. When it arrived, I looked at it with a raised eyebrow because it didn't necessarily tally with I knew was happening in certain schools. So the copy that you have in front of you has been amended slightly from the original that came from by the DfE, simply to highlight that in some cases those schools aren't expected to teach year 9, 10, 11, 12 and 13, i.e. the middle schools. Some don't teach year 7 and 8 because they're high schools, and one doesn't have a sixth form. So that's one change I've made. I have been to visit 3 of the 4 local authority secondary schools to talk to them about their RE provision, so that I could understand whether or not the data in here was accurate or not. That's obviously precipitated a wider discussion with the head of RE and the head teacher about the provision and the quality of the provision and so on and so forth. So those meetings have been very, very useful. I haven't yet been to James Calvert Spence College. That's the one to get, but I will continue to ask them for that meeting before Christmas. My view is that this data is not particularly accurate, because I think the way the questions are asked in the workforce census makes it quite difficult to be accurate in terms of what is RE and what's not. Now, if we feel that this is a useful piece of information, then I need your agreement or direction to go out to schools and ask them for similar data, obviously much more up to date, that we can look at and interpret and use in future. Because I'm not entirely sure that using this as the basis of any kind of work would necessarily be the right starting point. Because there is one middle school on there that says they don't teach any RE in year 8. Yet I was talking to the head of RE in that school last week, who said, oh yeah, we do. So I think if you want data like this to start a piece of work or to stimulate discussion amongst us, that's absolutely fine, but I would need your agreement to go out and collect much more accurate information that we could as a starting point.
Well, I think we certainly need accurate information. That's a starting point. And I think if you're getting that sort of feedback from 1 or 2 schools, it's important that we share that.
So would you like me to go out and ask the question about the proportion of time that is given to RE, and I can talk to schools about what their definition of RE is across the middle, secondary and high schools? Is that what you'd like me to do?
What can we assume about from the fact that the schools are listed?
All the middle and secondary schools.
For the high school? Cambridge?
Cambridge is there.
So that's why it might have been on page 9 as well. It definitely is on the list of it. Yes, you're absolutely right. I can do that, not a problem. That's absolutely fine. With with many of those schools, I will be able to expect the information back. They're a maintained school. I can ask the academies politely, but whether or not that information comes back, I have less ability to expect it. It's a polite way. So I'm happy to do the work if you think it's going to be a useful piece of work to do that can inform our discussions in the future. And I'm pleased that we've got the information in the first place, because it has been the beginnings of discussions and thoughts for me. But I don't think it's a strong enough set of data to start any detailed interrogation.
Well, the academy is all you've got as your power of persuasion.
Yeah.
Yeah, with this information, you could have been taking action, something that appropriate, which is a concern. We need to have.
So I'd say I can expect that from the maintained schools. Can't only have persuasion.
Take action on schools which don't appear to statutory duties.
We should, and again, I think that's why we need an accurate data set, so we can decide exactly what that action would.
Yeah,
whether it's.
Well, I think as long as we do follow
Well,
things up, it's important to have the right data.
We would need to follow it up. We haven't done that partly because of the pandemic, Prior to the pandemic, I don't think we did. We've always done it in a very supportive, cajoling manner. There is a place for that, but there might be a place for something a little slightly more strong arm tactics that potentially employ.
What would be interesting with the academies is, are they using Northumberland SACRE syllabus, which would give you maybe a little bit of leverage.
Yes, and again, we can ask that question.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will happily conduct that piece of work between now and Christmas with an expectation that it's ready for us to discuss.
Interesting. This is based on data that schools themselves provide DFE. And so somehow is the information isn't coming through as accurately. But last year when they sent out the report, there was a page and one of the things it says is treat this information with great caution. And as the basis, as Dave has said, of patients that are supportive and challenging, because that is SACRE's role. In relation to the local authority, I don't know how we do this, Dave, because you're an officer of the local. And one of the things that came through the analysis of SACRE report is that duties of SACRE is to advise the local authority. So are we advising the local authority that this is something we are investigating because you're doing it on the local? It's just important that the local authority knows that we are fulfilling our statutory obligations in relation to monitoring standards in our.
And I'll happily bring that up with the Director of Education at the next meeting.
Yes.
Just to bring some clarity, is every academy, does it have the name academy? So can we identify in this list which ones are academy?
Make sure that's on the data we get in February. Column says academy or.
Yes, sorry, it is.
I noticed that the school has very sort of, that's Cramond. Couple have very fluctuating level. Just keen to find out why, but is that likely just to be due to inaccuracy in data? Is it too soon to ask why?
I think it is. For example, Hayden Bridge, I was there last week, and it is not the case that there is no RE here. So that data is inaccurate.
Yeah, that was one of the ones that I noticed fluctuated.
Yeah. So to go from 5.77% in year 10 to nothing, curriculum model is unlikely to allow. So that's why I think it's a useful discussion to have, but I think we need the concrete data first to be able to have that discussion in a much effective manner.
A simple explanation for Cramond. Far more than it is now.
If I was a betting man, I would think that they have either misinterpreted the question, they don't call it RE, they mix up the subject with something else. So what they haven't extrapolated the time that they think they give to RE, whatever that subject might be. So they just put it down as 0. It could well be that the figures in year 10 and 11 are linked to an option or something else. So I just don't, having worked there many years ago, and knowing a little bit about the school now, I find it very surprising.
You know, a long time ago, they used to do one-day conferences and have very enthusiastic staff, but that's quite some time ago.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can we move on?
So have we agreed that it will go ahead with this one?
Yes.
Happy to do so. Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
They need to know, these schools need to know that person. Because I think this has been we're in the dark as to what's actually happening in some of this stuff in the schools. Okay, Holocaust Memorial Day. Now, in the notes from the previous meeting, apparently the local council, the councils are going to do something. But you've already mentioned, Dave, that you're passing on information to schools.
Yes, and I have spoken to people who normally organise events for the council for the Holocaust Memorial Day. I was due to be given a detailed rundown of what that's going to be. The person has gone to leave without doing that, so I can't give you an update today, but there is an event planned. As soon as I know what it is, I will email you to let you know.
There is, last year, there were portraits painted of survivors. There was a program, our new king organised it. And I think they're in one of the galleries at Buckingham Palace. And some of the survivors I've met. And what there is now an art competition being supervised by a young Jewish artist called Gideon Summerfield. And what he wants is for schools to produce some kind of art or connected, not necessarily with Holocaust survivors, but also if they want survivors of the genocides. Did I send you the information? That's gone out, has it?
On the newsletter, and it's on.
Great. That shows you just I haven't looked at your website.
That's on film now. It's going to be in the minutes. Have that in the minutes, please.
Okay. Right. Item 7, analysis of SACRE annual reports 2021. So it's what you send in, isn't it? Or not?
This is an analysis that's been done of all the annual
Right.
reports that we receive. And there is a long paper in your pack that explains the findings from that piece of work.
Yes, no, to 32.
For those of you that have read it, are there any thoughts or comments or suggestions?
On page 10, David, are we using the standard pro forma that's been proposed?
We are, yes.
Right.
Sorry, Ken, can you repeat the question?
Sorry?
What did you ask, Dave?
It was against the
Page 10, you said.
standard pro forma on page 10,
What do we
second
use?
paragraph.
Yes, I think all SACREs are now obliged to.
They are encouraged, they are strongly encouraged
Yeah,
because.
that's the way I read, not being the last week,
Right.
that's the way I read it. I just wanted to confirm that we're actually doing it.
I have to. Words. Is there anything? Yes.
Thanks. One thing I was curious about was on page 12, paragraph 2.2 at the start. Says that there is a need to discuss the need to update religious education in English schools on statutory guidance 2010 and circular 1. What's the need? Can you explain what the need to take those is?
Which item were you referring, sorry?
It was, page 12, 2.28.
Just the fact that they're very, very out of date. Well, 2010.
Oh, it's a long time ago, yeah.
Well,
So it's not that there's a
1984.
particular problem with them then.
Well, with regard to the religious education, we're not up to date with what is currently happening in the subject and the movement that has taken place. Been lots of developments in the subject since 2010.
Okay.
And the circular 190 is the one of collective worship in Ireland. And obviously 1990, quite a while ago now. And that legislation doesn't reflect what's been happening in schools, I would say, today.
It was, and I'm sure everybody watched it. There was an interesting debate in Westminster Hall on the 1st of November, and that was very much the focus of how relevant RE is in modern Britain today. And it's available on the Parliamentary Television channel. That was really interesting.
other willing to address within circular 1. It was it was a very narrow, conservative interpretation of the 88 Act, and it was a reaction to the way in which the Act had been liberally interpreted, and so the first circular, which was Circular 389, was replaced to make it a more conservative, more traditional interpretation, and that is what stands ever since. And it is symptomatic. I haven't actually watched that. And they give just saying things, they give state. He is actually very, very supportive of our, but again, has quite traditional approaches to what religion should be. So these are 2022.
Thanks.
And Nick did, lost his job, but he's back in education
I
now.
think again, under serving Minister of State in the Home Ministry.
Because
I had a nice letter from him once complimenting us on our writing results. Key stage 2, so I've kept that.
well, all the sort of complaint that went out about the EBAC, he always replied on behalf of Michael Gove at the time. Anybody got anything else they want to add? Joyce?
To page 11, and 1.5 and 1.7.
What, 1.5?
Page 11, 1.5 and 1.7. These are just about our future annual reports and trying to make sure that we really do reflect the quality of what we are able to do. So it's proof of the effectiveness of the training you're delivering and simply telling us it's happening. So evaluations and comments from teachers, those would strengthen the
Yeah, I was interested on page 12 as well, that so for me, page 12 is possibly the most useful page in the sense that it's recommendations that they are suggesting, but on 2.1 item 2, it talked about advice developed on how SACRE annual reports could have a greater focus on the impact of their work. And I thought that was actually something that's really important. You know, it's fine that we're having these meetings and so on, but what impact are we having on schools and the quality of education in RE here in North? And how do we, and I think it's important that we have a discussion about how we capture that and how we measure that impact.
Yes.
Can I ask about something on page 22? It's actually paragraph 6.2.6 at the top. Public roads. It says, well, that in a particular authority, 70 pupils have been withdrawn from RE lessons to the local authority. But SACRE had been officially informed of only 6 of those. It's quite a discrepancy, isn't it? I just wondered if SACRE is withdrawals from Northumberland.
I'm not sure whether those two paragraphs actually follow on each other, because it does. The previous page talks about here are some examples.
Oh, I see.
So it may well be that that's two separate examples,
Yeah, it could be.
but the question still stands.
Yeah.
If there is a request for a withdrawal, we should be informed.
Do the schools know this?
Yes. Very rarely get those reports. So again, that may be something back of what we do around the action plan, data collection that we feel we need to A, remind schools about their responsibilities, and B, ensure they understand what the process is, should there be a request.
They do notify the county council as for withdrawal, go to you and to us.
yes. I'm sure it's exactly as that says, that there are some withdrawn. See, there were a few, I'm sure that probably is the case. So again, Nick, that's a good problem, one we need to look at, how we can make the process more, and monitor it and evaluate it.
I banged on about the Facebook page that I'm on for RE teachers, and this does come up very regularly about withdrawal of pupils for sometimes just particular topics, either within the teaching of RE. And I think there was one recently about somebody wanting to withdraw a child because they weren't happy with a book that was being read in English. You know, just that. So it's not just RE. Right. Are we happy with that? We've had plenty of discussion around this.
It's a point on behalf of Chris Hudson, mention the section on page 27, sex and relationships education, and to highlight that as an area of prayer.
Which page?
Page 27, and sex and relationships and sex education. D.
Yeah.
I'm simply reading Chris's comment on that as a SACRE might be.
We do have a member of the School Improvement Service who provides support to schools around policy and help. So should SACRE want to support that, then that could.
Yeah. Is there anything else from this that anybody wants to bring up?
What's happened after the analysis? It's a long document, but what happens now? I mean, there's a lot of items in there to consider. Where's the next step?
That was what I thought after I read it.
Well, I read it, so where do we go now?
There have been some regional hubs set up, haven't there, for RE across the whole country, where people can access training at school, probably I do. But there is one in the east with Brent, I think heading. Is that an action that came from this? Possibly.
I think there's separate things, yes.
Yes, because I was going to bring that up.
Ted, I think in terms of actions, I think there's the recommendations that are going to SACRE to do things. And I think in terms of us as a SACRE, or you as a SACRE, accurately, it's about taking the good practice that's in there, that maybe Northumberland SACRE is not doing at the moment and doing it. But it's just a kind of analysis of what is going on, and interesting to see what other SACREs are doing and so on.
I do have one final point.
Yes.
Before we move on, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
On page 25, paragraph 7.3. It talks about the fact that collective worship seems to have a low priority nationally and locally. So it's connected perhaps to the fact that RE seems to have a low priority. This is about collective worship. It says that there has been a national review of RE. There's been no equivalent review of collective worship. I just wanted to bring that to people's attention. Just wondering whether, and I was also wondering whether we could help to address that in any way.
We did relaunch the collective worship policy just over a year ago.
Yes.
So that was, and we deliberately left that until sort of, shouldn't say after COVID, I appreciate, but a time when schools might be more able to take that on board. So it was brought back to the fore just over a year ago. Has been mentioned in those meetings that I've had, in particular in secondary schools. Probably find that collective worship is to take place in the manner you would expect it in first and primary middle schools, less likely in the secondary schools. So I was keen to remind them of the policy's existence, remind them of what's expected of them. Now, that's the nicey bit. Whether we need to go further in future to actually check what is being delivered, that's a discussion for another time. But yes, the policy is available. It is referred to. It's a question of whether schools are actually using it.
It's a county council policy or national policy.
It's a county council based on its own interpretation of, or it gives the national policy and then gives lots of examples of how it can be done well.
Just wondering if SACRE should be pushing for. Okay. I got the impression that, yeah, that it does say there's been a national review of nothing equivalent in relation to collection.
If we go back to the previous subject, collect data, can we answer that question? Having collective worshiping in each school. We answer that question. Data collect.
We can, if I'm being brutally honest, I think I'd probably like to do the two things separately. Because if I ask fewer questions, they're much more likely to give me the answers.
Yeah.
If I ask lots of questions, they're likely to give me no answers at all. So I'd happily sort of double the workload and go and do it twice over a period of time. But I think knowing the proportion of curriculum time that's given to RE is the most important one. So I think we can pick the collective worship one after February.
Doris, if I could speak on behalf of Chris Hudson again, he raised this with me, whether SACRE should consider adding more support and resources. I'm simply doing that. I absolutely agree with Dave's decision to try to separate those two areas out. I think it's very confusing. Parents get very confused between RE and collective worship. And I've separated in law, they're separated in inspection. Being committed to an objective educational approach to religious and collective worship can secure this discussion. It may be of interest in terms of national discussions on worship. I've been involved in one or two conversations with professional bodies, and members of professional bodies are absolutely divided down the line. So the Association of RE Inspectors of Fire Consultants, 50% wanted to end, 50% wanted to continue. So by ending it, I mean the worship element, assembly and schools getting together to promote spiritual, moral, social and cultural development, I think is very much in. But on the much more complex question of whether it should be worship and collective worship, and what that actually means, it is full of difficulty. And that's why the government hasn't touched it with the Bible for 20 years.
Thanks, Jonas. It's that word, assembly. And people think an assembly is usually an act of worship, but a lot of the schools don't want to do it like that, as you just said. No.
Sorry, this is a different definition. So an assembly is not an act of
Exactly.
worship, and it's helping people understand that.
Yeah.
I think absolutely agree about clarity, but also on schools should do. And your question, Nick, is sort of the kind of follow up really to your previous question about on page 12 about the need to update the national guidance.
Right, are we happy to go on to item 8?
Yes.
So, thanks for that, Dave, that you put in the link. Letter.
Yes, if you can promote it, according to the stats, and I don't know how reliable the stats are, just back to what we talked about earlier on. 61 views, which obviously doesn't include yourself.
So you put down.
They were all me, Dave.
If they were 36 of those views were glanced, which means you looked at it for a few seconds and then not bothered. 14 were quick reads, only 11 were deep reads. So we do still have a big issue in terms of coverage. If it was 161 and 160 of those were just glanced, then at least I'd know the right. But it's only 61. Quite a few of those will be me. When we do still have a piece of work to do in ensuring that teachers understand that it is there.
Yeah, because I think with, and I understand why you've not done it anymore, with the actual hard copy, you know, if you found it, you could look at the pages that were relevant to you. I mean, it was an extremely good newsletter, but I understand why it's gone on. Maybe when you're in the schools, you could sort of mention it as well.
They always do.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you get feedback from the various churches and other worldview groups? Newsletter, because it's circulated to them, or it's available to them as well.
It's available to anybody. Yeah, it's available
I'm
to
just
anybody.
wondering if you.
I've had no feedback whatsoever. I get the things that I get sent, I add to it, but I haven't had any feedback on anybody.
I've raised the item a number of times in the I deal with, and got the impression there haven't been any sort of feedback or any people seem to read it, you know.
Yeah.
So.
And that may be the case. That was part of the reason for going to something electronic. Because we could update it much more quickly.
Yeah.
Part of it was the cost.
Yeah.
That didn't seem to be something that we could carry on for what limited views it seems to be getting. So, but if you can continue to publicise it, then I would be grateful.
Yeah.
SACRE membership update. Rebecca, is that you?
Yes. And so again, I sent out my original email way back when, and then sent out another email to all again in July. I then sent another one out in October, and the only person that's actually responded is the free churches, who are still, but everyone seems to be having trouble finding it.
I was talking to Andrew Barron, who's the RE advisor at Catholic School Secondary, because the lady who represents the Catholic community in and I know she hasn't been for a long time, it's Josephine Gussens, and Andrew said he was going to look into it, so I'll give him another nudge. But where did you send emails to?
All of the national bodies. So Dave sent me a list, and I sent them all.
I'm just wondering, you see, I think a lot of it's all very localized with the other faith. You know, like the Hindu community, the Muslim community, the Sikh community. It's if you can get into local people. Bhakti used to come for us from the Hindu Bhakti Raza.
But he hasn't been here.
No, and he's on, I can't remember whether he's on the Newcastle one, I don't think he is, but he's on the Durham one, but never turns out because he's sure. This is the difficulty, which means it's very, very difficult that, you know, the other faiths are not represented.
But the guidance was that we contacted the national bodies first. And that, as Rebecca says, she's done that 3 times.
Yeah.
With no positive outcome
Yeah.
as yet. Can I also just raise that there are a number of committee members who haven't attended for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And how you would like Rebecca and I to go forward with that. So,
I do personally was thinking that with another organisation that I belong to membership, recruitment and retention is one of the main themes that we discussed. And what we've come to realise over an extended period of time, tried lots and lots of ways of recruiting, including the production of VMAs with messages on. What works is personal contact. What works, and if we could, with our networks, use our networks, personal networks, to encourage people who are not involved, would have something to contribute, to put their names forward, that might produce a result.
and if I do the
That's
same,
how I came under this committee, through the personal contact, it wasn't through any of the means.
and if I do the same for those members who haven't attended for quite a long time, give them a ring and simply see if they are going to bother.
Is there not
Well,
something in the,
absolutely right, but
Yeah.
is there not something in the constitution that says?
there is, yes,
About attendance and,
but exactly as Stuart says, recruitment retention is not easy anyway, so. Yeah,
Ted knows all about it.
Joyce,
Is there a local interfaith council? Sorry to show my ignorance, but I don't know this at all. Because that might be we could contact conversations with them about.
well, there is a new council, but I don't. Northern-
there's the North East Churches together, NECT. Linked there.
Looking for all religious communities.
I think so, I'm not sure. Actually, certainly the Christian communities, I'm not sure whether it embraces other religions.
The other questions is about teacher organisations, and we've had somebody from the university sector or a head teacher being approached, which is within our current institution, because teacher organisations just to
Any year.
so we could perhaps membership sending. We ever had a head teacher? But you could. Access to, presumably head teachers have meetings together. So a way into head teachers and access to their meetings to RE. Can to make it heard.
certainly the head teacher briefings, I lead them. Syllabus has been mentioned sort of this term, so yes, that will be. There isn't a local, well, there are local interfaith groups, but there aren't any.
It would be council. And the thing is that you've got, like myself, perhaps, one or two people within the communities that are passionate about interfaith dialogue and the teaching of art. And they're just overloaded. And I can give you names and they can try and pass them on, but it doesn't always work. I mean, the good warrior in Newcastle, Jess Winder, is so busy, and his wife. And you can try, because I don't think, is there a good warrior in Northumberland? No.
Newcastle.
It's Newcastle, yeah, it's in Buckingham Street. A Hindu temple? Don't think there is, because
No,
it's something
not
you've
close
looked
enough.
at, isn't it? And I would imagine there are possibly house mosques.
There's a mosque in Blythe,
Right,
there's no mandir and there's no.
yes. So it's,
So what we're saying is we, as individuals, we can invite this meeting. Is that what we're saying? Because I know somebody who was an ex-head, became an education. He writes for education, religious studies. And he also helped out with one of the high schools, consultant, Vicky and Rachel.
Which committee would he fit on?
He's retired, but he does this just because he's interested. He's retired.
I think just to respond to your question about can we just invite people,
Yeah.
I would say not a kind of free for all in that sense, but it would be about can we approach people who will be able to fill the vacancies that we have?
Yeah.
And so the vacancies that we currently have, or we have people on the books but who don't attend from the Hindu community, the Sikh community, the Muslim community. Muslim community is a vacancy, but the other two people who don't attend, and the Hindu representative has already indicated to me that he won't attend. So it's, you know, those are our vacancies. But if you do know someone in higher education or who is a current head teacher, and who is passionate about RE, then certainly have a comment.
I think you have to represent the body. I know for Durham, the example is that every 3 years they write a letter to the synagogue saying, do you want this person to still represent you? You don't particularly do that. You know, I think the words now, but you've got to be part of a community to, I think, belong.
Yeah, I've had to seek authorization from the URC and the
Yes,
Methodist Church of
yes.
South East Northumberland to actually ensure that I'm representing correctly.
Flexibility to have to call.
Well, I mean, I was just about to say that.
But we can.
We
I'm
haven't
sure the
got-
Constitution says that we can.
Yeah, we can call. Yeah.
I would be keen for us to fill our vacancies. First, as a, you know, absolutely in terms of being able to have a more representative. Absolutely, as a, yes, yeah. For quite some time. So yes, if we can co-opt people who are going to contribute really well, like you have, to the committee. For me, it's about getting in a diverse group. Like, it's great that we're core it tonight again. So let's keep up the good work. But we're only just core, aren't we? You know, so if Paul or Joyce hadn't come, so thanks for coming. But do you know what I mean? So it puts a lot of pressure on just that one or two members. So.
So is it possible you can send out a list of the vacancies and we'll give it some thought?
Rebecca could. Thanks, Rebecca.
I think there's 2 on the Church of England, aren't they?
It's June Press.
They're normally,
Yes.
if you want, I can contact the diocese. See if we can 2 more, but that's could be the diverse, yeah.
Can we move on? Training available to play. At the Durham SACRE meeting last week, Carranza Passmore, who's the director of the RE Resources Centre, has brought up that this now England is divided into RE hubs, sorry, and Carranza is now going to be the lead for the North East, and this is to train members of the SACRE to go into schools, as I understand it.
Yes, the role of the RE hubs is much broader than that.
Yes, but part of what they're
One of the
offering
things
is
they're
that no matter how long you've been doing it, they want you to attend a session, and they will then give you a kite mark to say that you are, if I can use one of our words, kosher, to go in and do things in schools, so that and that will give they'll get training if necessary, if people are happy to do that. I also know that the Board of Deputies of Jews is doing the same with Jewish SACRE. Something similar to what Corinne's was offering. And it's under the auspices of NATRE. Is it NATRE? I think it's NATRE.
The regional hubs are funded by Fulham St Gabriel's.
That's
and
right.
Being
Yes,
operated and managed by NATRE.
that's right. Yes.
So the kite mark that Deanne's talking about, for those who are a member of a religious or worldview community, who are interested in going to schools, a place of worship can also get a kite mark. And so there are a number of online training sessions that you can choose from. I think they'll last for about an hour and a half. And so I know a number of members here have indicated previously that they'd be happy to go into schools, and we would really like to encourage you to do that kite mark, so that you've got that training, and so that schools know that you've got that kind of backing as well, that you've done that, so we can make sure that is circulated. In terms of this item of the agenda, and this is really about the SACRE training, and Rebecca has already sent that information out to you. But I really would like to encourage folk like last year to attend that training. And I was just going to do a quick little, I know a number of you will be governors in schools and things, and you'll know that the training records are kept and so on. And that's something that we will be reporting on our annual report. So I just wanted to have a quick show of hands from last year's training, because I know which ones I went to. And but I'd like to just see who else went to things, just so we can report on that, and then we'll continue about this year's. So the new annual report template one last year, I went to that. Dave, did you go to that?
No,
No. Okay. Did anyone else go to that? No. Oh, you missed out. Right. Then there was a November one on world views. Does anyone attend that? There was another world views one in February. Follow up. You think
I
you
think
did?
Joyce and I went to one of them. Can't remember. which.
And then the West Hill Awards, I went and Joyce went. The effective chair, being an effective chair, I attended that one. I don't know whether our chair attended that one. Where Now with Worldviews, I did attend that one. That was the one with Stephen Pett.
Yes, I did that.
I didn't think you went to that. Did you go to that, Diana?
I don't
No,
think so.
Then self-evaluation of SACRE, I went to that one. And so now you've joined your local SACRE in June. Rose went to that one.
Might have done that. Honestly, can't remember.
Okay. And then the conference, Joyce and I went to that. So it would be really great this coming year. So we've got a couple of names down there who did a number. But wouldn't it be great to have a broader set of names this coming year? So do take a look at what Rebecca sent out, and the hard copy is in the papers here on page 33, and you can see what's coming up. See, you've already missed the first two, but don't worry, there's still time for the 17th of November. SACRE's a way forward. This is page 33 in the pack. And so those are all the things that are coming up. And if you want to go to one of them, in that little box at the bottom, it says book a place, then email admin@natscred.org.uk. So if you just say which training course you would like to go to and which SACRE you're from, that would be really great, just to have that breadth of experience across all of SACRE. So it would be great to see people, see some training attended by people in all of the committees that we have represented here on SACRE.
and we have paid the £50 fee, so there won't be any charge at all.
Yes, so make the most of that £50.
Well, I have signed up for the March collective worship training.
Great, Nick, well done. Tick, well done. Joyce?
Next year's AGM is on the 22nd of May, and I wondered if we could agree that we will be represented there, because last year we agreed, Kaz and I were going to go, but before the deadline, and it was a Zoom conference, there was not enough people in person. they were frightened about reading 10 and 11. And if we'd booked in earlier and have had a SACRE meeting booked earlier, then that conference in person, which I think would be much more valuable experience. So, commit who would at this stage, even principal, you know, they would know that.
People happy to make that commitment? That somebody will go and represent the SACRE at the AGM. So nods over here, thank
Support that
you,
decision.
thank you. I've got 3 nods, so that's perfect. Brilliant, thanks so much. I think we can move on to item 11.
The SACRE issues, pages 35. And that's really the SACRE
Briefing.
briefing, and would remind people that from this Sunday onwards, it's National Intermediate Week. It's good. It's on there.
It's on the newsletter,
Yeah.
are you ready? Fiona?
All right, I'm getting phone calls. Can you come in tomorrow? Can you come in next week?
Yeah.
Don't know whether Joyce, you've had any requests to go in for National Intermediate Week? No. Or you, Stuart?
Regarded as a thing. Not necessarily thought of.
Oh, that's true, sorry. But, you know, it's
Oh, yeah,
well
we
used.
enjoy that.
UK Humanists have been reminding
Yeah.
schools that you should be represented
Yes.
as
They're not
part of the
happy to
intermediate
come forward,
week,
are they?
so don't worry. No, absolutely not. Luke likes to ensure.
Is there
Yeah.
anything in detail that needs to be looked at in here?
So see, this is the last one, isn't it? So the latest one just came out
Yeah.
2 or 3 days ago.
Yes.
So
Can I just ask, item on page 38, we talk about SACRE self-evaluation tool. I wasn't at the last meeting, but have we considered using that tool? Is there a sort of check ourselves as to what we're doing or
It
what
was-
we're not doing? Or?
it was raised, and I was going to raise it again actually as part of the next agenda item, because I think that
Okay.
would be a really useful
I think it would be useful as well.
piece of work for a subcommittee perhaps to do. And then to bring to the wider group, but I'm also very happy if SACRE members felt they wanted to do that as a whole group, but it is quite a long document, so it might be that we would choose a particular section. Yeah, but I think it is important that SACRE does with that.
We did it in Durham. Yes, and I
But
think
there was a subcommittee.
There was a subcommittee,
Yeah.
and then we broke up into small groups at the main meeting.
Mhm.
Did it again last week.
Chair, on item page 40, there's an item regarding items for the next agenda. Have we considering any of those items? For our future agenda?
We did report card.
Yeah, I've noticed that there.
We fed back from the last ones.
And the education white paper,
It was that one I was really looking.
who knows where that might be. And so I think might need to wait for a little stability at the DFE and
Right.
to give them time to decide exactly what.
Just wondering if there's anything in that paper, the white paper, that was what we're doing or not doing,
There's nothing in the white paper specifically. I think the noises that have been made since then, particularly the discussion that Paul was talking about, mean that actually RE would be in a slightly better place than it's got a higher profile at the
Yeah.
moment. Certainly discussions around its inclusion in the EBAC have resurfaced in recent weeks.
Yeah, definitely.
Very useful if you were to look at the draft REC handbook, which is a document that will be finalised, I think, in 2024. In the work of commission and ways in which religion and worldviews are to be developed. So I asked for to feedback. Thoughts about it would be useful for me.
we put that on the next agenda?
I think so.
Are we on to item 12?
And someone, yeah.
Just that it mentions on page 38, of the next round of annual. Ideally.
We're just waiting for somebody to finish their section off.
Yeah.
That'd be
so,
me. But,
So-
yes, it's
Yeah.
well on its way, isn't it, Mr. Cookson?
Yeah.
It's very well on its way, and I'm sure by the end of next week, it'll be complete.
So panic is.
Absolutely.
Latest 31st of March, so.
Okay, no one's panicking yet.
But I'd also say that I thought, I was very interested to read at the top of page 37 about Leicester having applied for a West Hill East building project. And a great, very keen to support a similar project in Northern. That's how the offer to leave, but I'm very happy.
Right. So do you mean you would like to support us applying for West Hill Ward, or you would like to support us? What?
Perhaps we should ask, well, so potentially both, yeah, but if anyone else has a comment.
For the ward, we would need to apply that by March. Yeah, 31st of March, 2023. The key thing, so Joyce and I went to the West Hill Awards training last year. Unfortunately, you just missed it, Nick, but you might be able to get the recording. The key thing was really about diversity in terms of and we want to do diversity. So if we could think of something that would meet the criteria, then by all means, that was something that Joyce raised last year, that we were thinking of, we would like to at some stage apply for a West Hill Award, but then syllabus was the main focus. Would you like to talk to that?
Just that, I think the West Hill Awards are supportive of doing as a SACRE. In terms of subcommittee and the action plan, we did put the West Hill Award into next academic year. Just because we're rolling out the syllabus was and the West Hill Award will be made next year. So the first doing it, much time and energy remains, and you have to have an idea of and why particularly. And I'm certainly very keen to do something.
I would agree in terms of capacity for this coming year, particularly if you're wanting any input from when my mandate for this year really is supporting the syllabus.
Yeah.
But perhaps off the back of that work, it might be that something comes to the light we might want to then look at. Yes, in principle, absolutely.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting anyone to jump to action on that suggestion. I wanted to get people thinking about it, so perhaps I've achieved that, and we might think about what's the role next year.
Do they change the themes?
No,
It's around that. I mean, it's rather ironic actually, that you brought that up, because of course there've been problems in Leicester recently, which would be.
Yeah.
And people were very shocked because it's a very diverse community. Right, action plan. Anything you want to add?
The action plan that's in your pack was born out of the work that Joyce led for the subcommittee last year. So the objectives are pretty much points that were raised by that subcommittee to address it. What we need to agree is A, if they are the right points in there, and B, start adding names for persons who are going to be responsible for the objective through to finish your provision. And to really get the work underway, because action plan is used unless people are actually to account and are doing the things that are. I'm pleased to say that the clerk has achieved objective 1.
Yeah.
As we are in a different venue. Whether we prefer this venue to the other one, we'll talk about as the camera goes off. But, you know, we do need to move on. We did in the last meeting have a discussion, a point on the agenda that we were going to discuss in some detail. That hasn't necessarily happened this time, but I think it's something that A, we quite enjoyed, and B, feel is important to have that time for discussion rather than just the business. So we need to ensure that that's back in there.
That encourages new members as well, Dave, doesn't it?
Yes.
Well, it's not just about process, but it's about something.
Absolutely, when it's not just listening.
Yeah.
Point 5, SACRE should consider having hybrid meetings. So I wonder if there's anybody who would like to, I mean, the clerk is down for the vast majority of these.
I think it's 16 day.
Yeah.
Where we stand in relation to the local authority.
So,
That could be subsumed under 16.
right, so you said you were happy, Joyce, to oversee that one. Would that be fair? Okay, good. 15, the analysis of the work foundation exam results. I'll do that.
Two items conflated there. And
Yeah.
so they would be separate agenda items.
Yeah.
We could do exam results this meeting. In turn, that would
14 can be arranged at any time, so that's absolutely fine. We just need to decide when in the cycle it would be most appropriate for the chair, Kaz and I, to have a meeting with Audrey Kingham. When the most appropriate time might be. I think she would probably be quite keen to understand about exam results. So, as the validated results will be with us in December, then we did it after the February meeting, then there's 2 meetings worth of discussion plus data to discuss. Does that make sense? Shall we start with it there and see?
See it as a single issue meeting.
That's up to you to decide. If it's us, Kaz and I in the chair feeding back on on the work of the committee and informing the local authority, then I wouldn't imagine it would be a single issue. But
You'd be willing to take forward issues that are raised for SACRE.
I would, as long as Kaz would, and would absolutely.
Yeah, that
So,
would be the
Yeah.
so in order to fulfill our statutory duty to advise the local authority.
So if you could put something together for Audrey, Guy, myself. March, you're not good.
Well, I think March isn't good.
Is that when you're on a cruise? Sometime in March, that would be. 13, we begin to discuss how far schools meet their statutory duties, and again, once we've got the data that we talked about earlier on, we'll be able to look at that. Certainly at the middle and secondary. Seeking ways in which we can play a greater role in Holocaust Memorial Day. We don't quite know what the council are going to do again this year. Usual, but whatever that is. Is there anybody who would particularly like to take a role on that planning committee?
If I could do it by Zoom. Of course it is.
Right, I will see if I can. 11, and I'm not entirely sure why I'm going backwards, but I am.
No, I'm not.
The Lindisfarne Gospels, it's still on.
Yes, I have investigated that. Fortunately, the ship had sailed, by the time any information was passed on to the SACRE. So a number of schools were visited on, a group of people did a pilgrimage, up to Lindisfarne, and a number of schools in Northern visited along the way. The Lindisfarne Gospels are still in situ in the Line Gallery until I think it's 3rd of December. And I have, I will let you know, there's some resources on the just resources center. Right.
Yes, just to say that all the children in Slaley First School are going to Slaley Church tomorrow to see our Slaley sheep, which apparently is grazing in the church. So we're all going up tomorrow and going to do some work. We're going to do some art then because our speech for tomorrow.
Excellent.
Yeah, the people who put together the illuminated sheep project, which is linked with this farm.
Yeah.
Gospels, they are offering workshops. Well, so some of the local schools, I had to go to a meeting there, but local schools adopted a sheep for a short period of time, but if there's a website, just willing to go into schools and do work on things like calligraphy and the style of the.
Great. I wasn't aware of the sheet, so if you could maybe pass that on to Dave and
Yeah,
put
if you
it
pass
onto
that
the
information on,
newsletter, Deanna can check it out.
In terms of the action plan, the promotion of the events did take place. So again, it was on page of Northumberland Education website and the newsletter.
Yeah.
Whether people saw that information and did something about it, I can't tell you, but in terms of what's in the plan. I think
Do we know if high schools are getting involved? It is quite a unique thing. It's a unique article. The book, it is quite unique. There is not another like it.
Yep.
And so on just the aesthetics of it is it's got an appeal. Strangely enough, I used to go and see it quite often. I lived in London. It used to make me homesick. But so the thing is that it is related to not just the history, but the culture. So I think you know, to actually to open it up to the children in high schools to a bigger way is astonishing. When you consider it was written by hand, it was written by pages, beautiful. It's an astonishing book in itself.
whether they've taken up that opportunity, I don't know, is the honest answer. But the opportunity is there and the information is out there. Take it, feel that fits in with it. I think 10 is one where I would like to see some output, because I think that for schools, knowing who to approach, where they can go, would be really, really useful. So I think it's something that teachers and schools would really value. That is one of the most important action plans.
That's the most frequently asked question, I guess, via email. from schools. So it'd be, and that was something that I think was discussed in the subcommittee. I asked if the guidance pages that were in the old syllabus that had a list of places of worship could be, whether some members would be willing to check out with those places of worship, whether they are still willing to receive visitors, and being able to have a list of visitors and places to visit would be really helpful. And we could take mark getting as many.
The list of places to worship, does that include places in Tyneside as well?
It would have to.
It will have to, in order to enable to visit diverse churches.
Of further afield, like Durham, the Durham Cathedral?
Got Newcastle. That's been revamped. It's much more of an open space, and you've also got the. And I think there is also a Coptic church. Yeah, so
I have an idea.
what I was going to say was, if you can send a copy of the places, is there a copy of it on the syllabus? On the latest
Not in the
syllabus?
new syllabus now.
Well, if you check it, the old one, and maybe send that out to you.
Yes, what I'm saying is that that needs to be updated.
Well, it
Needs
needs to be sent to the young people. Dated.
Okay, thank you.
I'm putting Deanna down as in
You've
charge
written
of that.
Deanna down to sort that out. That's brilliant.
Deanna, that's very kind. Point 9, the rollout of the agreed syllabus. We are onto that. Obviously, Kaz has done some training this term, as she's talked about, and has got the next network meetings planned. We might look for something, and teachers in the room can tell me if this might be a good idea. Some event toward after Easter, following exams and SATs and so on and so forth, that just brings the syllabus back into focus, so that basically we're reminding all schools that they need to be doing it, and it's a chance A, for them to talk to each other about what they're doing and how they B, a chance for Kaz to something in as well. So it's not a relaunch, it's just a reminder, something like that. Is that the kind of thing that you would
Yes.
see as a useful?
Sorry to give them all. Yes.
I think it's always useful for teachers to share sort of
Yeah,
good practice with each other and have a chance to discuss sort of how's it working
Yeah,
in your
yeah,
school,
yeah,
how's it working in
absolutely.
your school, so
And
definitely.
it wouldn't be a case of lots of new stuff. It would
Yeah.
try and do as much of that as possible, give you the chance to talk to each other. So that's another thing.
We have done something like that.
We have them, yeah.
Also, Kaz, from the training and the feedback from schools, and have an idea, she may have some further input you want to give us. In retrospect.
8, I think we mentioned earlier on. If we put Clark and lead officer down for that one, Rebecca and I will follow up on higher education, and one of the head teacher, be it either the NHT or SACRE unions there. 7, we've discussed in part about the impact of CPD, and we can certainly do that this year for that. 6, would that fit in with your overall discussion about status? 16 as a sub-point thing.
I ask what 6 is all about? What see if it's all the idea about how long you
That energy, really. It is possible to be on a SACRE and remain on it for have to energy and involvement, and if it's a fixed term, people take it on a speed rather than doing. So it is just trying to clarify the chair. It isn't stuck somewhere. To keep it we didn't talk about it in relation to sequences. To be the most appropriate thing for us. So if text. Sense to it.
Next 2 minutes. Always a yes. Anything to keep things.
You read it to like to change to the constitution.
Oh, syndicate for the copies.
Yes, it is. It would remain within the gift of the local, if that's what decided by everyone. But you'll be asking the local authority to what the SACRE sequence. So it's not too. It's not great.
Five we've discussed. 4 is about having a key agenda item and that discussion or the presentation from schools mentioned. So we can add, I think the discussion, I think it might be difficult to fit in good practice in RE from a particular school every term. So we have suggested the spring term agenda on there. So we can certainly do that for the spring term as a school. Would that be instead of or as well as discussion, please? Question. I think the discussion piece is useful and we ought to do regularly. Mindful of the fact that could, if we did that as well as a good practice in RE section, it could make for
Discuss what we mean by good.
So if we do that for next term, so the discussion will be around what is good practice. And we'll decide at the next meeting, the February meeting, what the discussion topic will be. So we all agree. And I think that's pretty much everything. I will rewrite the action plan, or I'll edit the action plan, have a new copy sent out to you with minutes. And we will try and put start dates in everything as well, so that we are so that there is some accountability to having these things done sooner rather. And the plan was all this was done this year, Joyce, wasn't it? This was all this academic years, not future academic years points, which were also done. Lovely, thank you.
Do you want the dates for the next meeting changed?
But just not
Because you said
to fit around me, but
well, you're reading it, so you know, it's I don't know what you think.
well, I don't know what the rules are about council, but the 15th of February would work.
Well, maybe it's
So,
The week before. Our half term is different from everybody else in the country.
yes,
the 15th will suit you better.
Yes, but I don't want the whole everyone to have to
We're
get.
talking about RE as you're here.
yeah, I think what we do need
February, 15th of February.
15th of February.
And you see if that's possible.
Yeah.
Please.
That work for people in the room.
The day after my birthday, I can bring cake.
Excellent, brilliant. We can add that to the action plan.
No tea now. Okay.
And does anybody have business?
Just in terms of the school that will be invited, what do you want to take about that?
You and I will discuss that
Perfect,
once the meeting is closed.
excellent.
I can just mention under any of the business that we should have census data on the 28th of November. Some has been released already, but something will be of most interest to us, should be released 28th. I'll endeavour to have that on the next agenda. So what the trends have been over the last.
Sounds like that link with data on religion.
Got some population stuff. Yes. Next lot should be the stuff that we.
If I may.
Mhm.
We talked about possibility of creating local units with syllabus. And I think some of us discussed possibility of creating a unit of history of Northumberland. Discussed
I
this.
think it was Chris Hudson brought that up, didn't he?
Yeah, we did talk about that.
Yes.
Yeah, talked about that.
Well, I had a meeting with a archaeologist from Western Uni. He was talking quite a lot about religious archaeology, religious history. So I mentioned that that I was on the SACRE and that thinking about it, and asked him whether he might be interested in helping. He has two colleagues who he thinks highly suited to helping us, and he put me in contact with and they're interested. One is the uni. I didn't write down what his job title or interests are. In fact, I don't think I know much about the first one. The second one is from Durham Uni. He's interested in early medieval Christianity in the Northeast, researching early medieval Spain, community archaeology project on from pre. Interested in finding out more, actually helping. So it's something we should pursue. Interesting to me.
I think if we're going to do the local units, which we did discuss in the past, then there wasn't necessarily the level of commitment that needed to make it work. If we're going to do the local units, we probably need to do them for all the different religions, or would doing them.
I think we would need to select which of the units in the current syllabus we have will and capacity to localize. I wouldn't be proposing that we write a new unit from scratch to add to the syllabus because we've got material. But if we are able to localize some units, that would be brilliant. I think we would. My only hesitation, well, the hesitation is about capacity and about people willing to step up and help, and unable to. The other query would be, or concern would be about potential that we might end up with localized units that are very Christian heavy and potentially are very historical focus, and so we would need to work very hard to make sure if we were going to spend. I know that people are keen to, go to Strong Gospels and Cuthbert Reid and Pals, and that's all great, but we need make sure that's our sure that do just Christian.
Me too. I noticed that SEC guy David Peck is running a project that focuses on all North religions. Pretty wide. So if we did work on this with these people, could set the make it obvious, make it clear what we're after right from the very start.
there's any possibility of combining some of those. Outside to create resource at the end, which could be some interest. There is more diversity,
Just
than
wanted to say that.
one would think initially. Material resources.
Yeah, I was just going to say, obviously, Holywell, there is a lot of local history, I mean, really local. You know, so when we're talking about local, you could say Northumberland itself is local to some extent, so Lindisfarne Gospel, but are we not talking about like the locality of where the schools are based? What is local to them, their communities? And I think that's vital. And it can be Christian based, it can be Jewish based, it can be all sorts of other faiths based. But you know, and if you go further out into Northumberland, you start going into all the cultures. And I think that it's worth having that discussion and bringing that into the schools. So
Absolutely, I
Yeah.
don't disagree, Les. I think my point was that there are no, unless I'm completely wrong, there aren't no, for example, gathered Jewish communities in Northumberland or gathered Hindu communities. And so when we say local to the school, the reality is that for most of our schools, they're not going to have those communities, and it's vital that they learn about those communities. I think is, and so that was my kind of hesitation, that I wouldn't want it to reinforce stereotypes that are already there.
I think it possibly needs more discussion as to about what we're actually going to be looking at, because it's not what Nick quite said. There's a slight there's a big divergence there between what you're offering and what you're suggesting. And I think we perhaps need more time to have a look at that and where that fits within the syllabus.
I think we need to start with the syllabus first,
Yes, I mean,
see what the
that's
units
what,
are, and then
yeah.
see how we can localize,
but thank you for doing the research.
getting some people
Yeah.
keen, that's great.
Yeah. But as I say, I think, we need to push the syllabus that we've got and get the teachers on board and happy with what they're doing.
Up the ball back, send something that Nick is talking about, a copy of the syllabus, asking contribution could make researches, discussions, existing syllabus.
Something I would need to ponder.
Yes, I think, everything's coming in at the end of the meeting. And I have another meeting that I have to do at 7:30, so would everybody mind if we drew this to a conclusion? And, it's something to go away and think about. And thank you, everybody, for your input.
Thank you.
And hopefully see you on, we think on the 15th of May.
Hopefully so, yeah.
Right.
Thanks a lot.